Welcome to the Pencil Bob channel. I hope you enjoy my stories. Please like and subscribe, and hit that notification icon so you never miss out. Now on with the stories.
As a landlord, navigating the complexities of property management was supposed to be straightforward, but nothing could have prepared me for the headache that unfolded over one sweltering weekend in South Florida. When I bought this condo in West Palm Beach a few years ago, I was excited to have my own place in sunny Florida. The building seemed nice, the unit was in good shape, and I figured the HOA would take care of things and make my life easier. Boy, was I wrong. After living there for about 2 years, I couldn't stand the HOA anymore. They had so many ridiculous rules that didn't make any sense. It felt like they were always looking for ways to make life difficult for residents. So I decided to move out and rent the place instead. At least that way I could still keep the property as an investment without having to deal with the HOA nonsense on a daily basis. Everything was going fine with my tenants for a while. They seemed like good people, a nice family with a young son. I tried to be a responsive landlord and take care of any issues that came up. But then last Friday, I got a call that their air conditioning had completely broken down. In South Florida, in August. Not good. I immediately called an HVAC company to go check it out. The technician went over and determined the whole AC unit needed to be replaced. It wasn't cheap, but I approved the work right away. With the heat and humidity down there, you can't mess around when it comes to air conditioning. The HVAC guys got started on the replacement that afternoon. But then around 4 p.m. I got another call from my tenants. Apparently the building manager had shown up and told the HVAC technicians they had to stop working immediately. He said there was an HOA rule that no repairs or service work could be done after 4 p.m. on weekdays or at all on weekends. I couldn't believe it. Here we had a family with no air conditioning, including a child on in-home hospice care, and the HOA was saying tough luck. You have to wait until Monday. It made no sense to me. This wasn't some cosmetic repair or minor inconvenience. This was a serious health and safety issue. I tried calling the HOA office to explain the situation, but of course they were closed for the weekend. I left messages and sent emails, but got no response. I told my tenants to stand their ground and insist the work continue, but I think they were intimidated by the building manager. The HVAC company said their hands were tied. They didn't want to risk getting in trouble or losing future business in the building. So there my poor tenants were, stuck in a hot condo for the entire weekend with no air conditioning. I felt terrible about it. I offered to put them up in a hotel, but they said moving all the medical equipment for their son would be too difficult. I suggested buying more fans or a portable AC unit, but they insisted they were managing okay with what they had. They were being way too nice about the whole thing, if you ask me. I spent the weekend stewing about it and trying to figure out what to do. I remembered when I lived there, something similar had happened to me with a plumbing issue. That time I had threatened to call the police and file a complaint about unsafe living conditions. The HOA had backed down and let the work continue, but I was there in person then to stand up to them. It's harder to put pressure on them from across the country. I started asking around to see if anyone knew of any laws or regulations about this kind of situation. Surely there must be rules about landlords providing habitable living conditions, right? Especially with the medical situation involved. But I couldn't find any clear answers. I spoke to another resident in the building who told me they knew of cases where seniors had been allowed to have AC repairs done on weekends. So clearly the HOA was willing to make exceptions sometimes. Why not in this case? It seemed completely arbitrary and unfair. The whole thing just made me so angry. Here I was trying to do the right thing as a landlord, taking care of a necessary repair right away, and the HOA was actively preventing me from providing safe, livable conditions for my tenants. Over some stupid rule about work hours that makes no sense in an emergency situation. I started wondering about the legal implications. What if one of my tenants got heat stroke or had to be hospitalized due to the lack of air conditioning? Could I be held liable as the landlord, even though I was trying to fix the problem? Could the HOA be sued for preventing necessary repairs? There had to be some kind of tenant protection laws that applied here. The more I thought about it, the more ridiculous the whole situation seemed. We're talking about Florida in the middle of summer. Air conditioning isn't a luxury, it's a necessity, especially for someone with medical issues. How could the HOA justify putting people's health at risk over some arbitrary rule? I spent hours researching HOA regulations, tenant rights, and landlord responsibilities. But the laws seemed frustratingly vague. There were general requirements about providing habitable living conditions, but nothing specific about air conditioning or time limits on repairs. It seemed to fall into a gray area. By Sunday night, I was beyond frustrated. My tenants had now gone 3 full days without AC. The HVAC company was scheduled to come back first thing Monday morning to finish the job, but the damage was already done. My tenants had suffered through a miserable, potentially dangerous weekend. And for what? So the HOA could feel like they were enforcing their precious rules? I knew I needed to do something to make it right for my tenants. I decided I would give them a significant discount on next month's rent to make up for the ordeal. It wasn't their fault, and they shouldn't have to pay full price for days without a crucial amenity like air conditioning. But I also knew I needed to address this with the HOA directly. This kind of inflexibility and disregard for residents' well-being was unacceptable. I was already dreading the confrontation, knowing how unreasonable they could be. But I felt like I had to stand up, not just for my tenants, but for all the residents who might face similar situations in the future. As Monday morning rolled around, I was still unsure of my next steps. Should I try to reason with the HOA, threaten legal action, rally other residents to push for changes to the rules? I didn't have any easy answers. All I knew was that this situation had exposed some serious flaws in how the HOA operated. And as a property owner and landlord, I couldn't just sit back and accept it. The AC repair was finally getting finished, but this was far from over. I had a feeling I was in for a long battle with the HOA, but someone had to challenge their rigid, nonsensical policies. If not me, then who? I just hoped I could effect some real change before the next emergency situation came up. Because in the Florida heat, it was only a matter of time before another AC crisis hit, and next time the consequences could be even more serious. I can't believe the audacity of this HOA. They're literally putting people's health at risk over a ridiculous rule. In Florida, AC isn't a luxury, it's a necessity, especially for someone on hospice care. What kind of heartless bureaucrats are running this place? It's clear they care more about flexing their authority than the well-being of residents. This is exactly why so many people hate HOAs. They start out with good intentions but end up being run by petty tyrants who get off on enforcing pointless rules. I hope the condo owner sues them into oblivion. Maybe then they'll learn that some rules need to be flexible in emergencies. Until then, they're just a bunch of self-important jerks making everyone's lives miserable. This HOA is the epitome of everything people hate about these organizations. They create ridiculous rules without any regard for common sense or basic human decency, then enforce them with an iron fist like they're some kind of mini-dictatorship. It's absolutely outrageous that they'd prevent an emergency AC repair in Florida of all places. Do they not understand how dangerous extreme heat can be, especially for vulnerable individuals like the child on hospice care? The inconsistency in their enforcement, making exceptions for some but not others, just highlights how arbitrary and unfair their system is. It's not about maintaining standards or improving the community, it's about power trips and playing favorites. I sincerely hope the condo owner takes legal action against this HOA. There have to be laws about maintaining safe living conditions that trump their petty rules. Maybe if they face some serious consequences, they'll finally realize that their job is to serve the community, not lord over it like medieval barons. This kind of inflexibility and lack of empathy is exactly why so many people are wary of HOAs. They start with good intentions, but too often devolve into bureaucratic nightmares, run by small-minded individuals, drunk on what little authority they have. It's time for some serious reform in how these organizations operate. This HOA is the perfect example of everything wrong with these organizations. They create these arbitrary rules without any consideration for real-world situations, then enforce them blindly like some kind of dystopian government. It's absolutely insane that they'd prevent an emergency AC repair in the middle of a Florida summer. Do they not understand how dangerous heat can be, especially for vulnerable people like the sick child mentioned? The fact that they've made exceptions for seniors in the past just shows how inconsistent and unfair their enforcement is. It's all about who complains the loudest or who they like best, not about what's actually right or necessary. This kind of inflexibility and lack of common sense is why HOAs get such a bad rap. I hope the owner takes legal action against them. There have to be laws about maintaining habitable living conditions that supersede HOA rules. Maybe if they get hit in the wallet, they'll finally realize that their job is to make the community better, not to play power games with people's lives. I'm a board member of a 207-unit luxury building in Brooklyn, and I've found myself in a rather sticky situation. A sprinkler burst in our building and ran for 40 minutes, causing extensive damage to several units and the common areas. The insurance company provided us with $342,000 to address the damage, which seemed like a good start. However, things have not gone as smoothly as one would hope. The contractor we hired has been sending us estimates ranging from $10,000 to $40,000 to fix the units. This is significantly lower than the $50,000 to $60,000 that our public adjuster estimated it would cost to repair the damage. The affected units suffered substantial damage to living room and kitchen floors, kitchen walls and closets, bathrooms, and more. It's been almost a year since the incident, and the residents of these units have been living with buckled floors and potential mold growth. One unit owner decided to get their own estimates from different contractors, and these estimates range from $60,000 to $70,000, which is higher than our public adjuster's estimate. This has made the board suspicious, as no other unit has provided an estimate higher than $10,000. The board has only spent $39,000 so far to fix everyone's damages, including common areas, but we're refusing to pay for the estimate of the only unit that decided to use their own contractor because it seems too high. As a board member, I'm torn. I believe that our main goal should be to fix the units properly, even if it means spending more money. We only received this insurance money because the units were impacted for months, and now they might be living with mold. The board and the building contractor don't seem concerned about mold, even though it has already been found in 3 different units. This doesn't sit right with me. How can the restoration of a luxury building's penthouse floor and reinstallation of a kitchen cost only $10,000? I'm troubled by the board's approach. It seems like they're more interested in saving money for the reserve than in properly fixing the units. I understand the importance of having a reserve, but not at the expense of the residents' living conditions. The board's contractor only did a visual inspection and didn't see a lot of the damage, which is why their estimates are so low. Some units even declined the work because they didn't trust the contractor's assessment. I've been thinking about what we can do when 5 different contractors are saying that the board's contractor is providing way too low estimates for so much damage, and only one person is coming back with a higher estimate. It's a difficult situation because the board doesn't seem to care about mold. They just want the cheapest contractor to repair everything. This is concerning because if the units weren't properly dried out after the sprinkler burst, there could be mold everywhere. I've heard of similar situations where the final bill for water remediation and repair was around $500,000, which makes our current spending seem even more unrealistic. I'm also aware that tenants can use their insurance, and their insurance will subrogate, forcing the HOA insurer to pay. According to our bylaws, because the sprinkler system malfunctioned due to the building's poor construction, we are liable to fix everyone's unit. So what happens if we go with this contractor who is charging a fraction of what others say it should cost? For larger jobs with multiple units and types of repairs, the contract usually states that payment is made when certain milestones are completed. This means the check doesn't go out until 2 board members or officers sign off that a phase of the work was done. But what if the contract was too good to be true? What if the contractor never completes the first milestone, does a bad job, or asks to get paid anyway? What if they start working and then ask for more money? Maybe we need to go back to the second best bid to get the work done, or maybe it will work out with the current contractor. There isn't enough information to say what the best option is. But is $30,000 to fix 3 units really unbelievable when the other 14 units were fixed for $39,000 total? I'm also considering hiring a project manager for this one-off issue to ensure the work is done properly. The board's reluctance to address the mold issue is particularly troubling. Mold can have serious health implications, and it's not something that should be ignored. I've seen the impact of mold on people's health and well-being, and it's not something to take lightly. The fact that mold has already been found in 3 units should be a wake-up call for the board, but they seem more focused on saving money than on the residents' health. I've been trying to think of ways to address this issue with the board. I know that the governing documents require the HOA to adopt an annual budget that sets forth anticipated costs to maintain the common areas and hold a reserve fund for repairs and replacements. If the board is not fulfilling its maintenance obligations, it's important to bring this to their attention in a formal meeting. I plan to gather evidence of the neglect, such as photos of the damaged areas and records of the mold findings, and present this to the board. If the board fails to address the issue, there are other steps that can be taken. One option is to mobilize other unit owners to sign a petition and remove a board member who is not performing their duties. This is a complex and slow process, but it could ultimately result in a more effective HOA that keeps the common areas properly repaired and maintained. Another option is to amend the governing documents to give the HOA more power to maintain the common areas or to change the procedures for raising dues or making special assessments. This would require a vote of all the members, which can be difficult to obtain, but it might be necessary to ensure that the HOA has the authority to address maintenance issues properly. I'm also considering the possibility of suing the HOA for negligence. This is a time-consuming and expensive process, and the outcome is never certain, but it might be necessary if the board continues to neglect its responsibilities. To have a compelling case, I would need strong evidence of the board's failure to address the mold issue and the inadequate repairs. In the meantime, I'm trying to find a way to balance the need to save money for the reserve with the need to properly fix the units. It's a difficult situation, and I'm not sure what the best course of action is. I just know that the current approach isn't working, and something needs to change. I'm open to any suggestions or advice on how to handle this situation. It's been a challenging year, and I want to do what's best for the residents and the building. The board's focus on saving money at the expense of proper repairs and residents' health is not acceptable, and I'm determined to find a solution that addresses both the financial and maintenance needs of the building. The negligence displayed by this HOA board is beyond comprehension. Mold is not just a minor inconvenience, it poses serious health risks, and the fact that it has already been found in 3 units should have sent alarm bells ringing. Instead, the board seems completely indifferent to the well-being of the residents. They're more focused on saving money than ensuring that the building is safe and livable. Allowing residents to suffer through water damage and potential mold growth for nearly a year is a gross dereliction of duty. The board's contractor is clearly providing lowball estimates, and it's alarming that they're willing to accept such shoddy work. The one unit owner who sought a higher estimate is simply trying to protect their home, yet the board treats them with suspicion. This is a classic case of penny-wise, pound-foolish thinking. If the board continues to ignore the legitimate concerns of the residents, they risk creating a much larger problem down the line. The residents need to come together and demand accountability from their board. They deserve transparency regarding how their money is being spent and why the board is so reluctant to invest in proper repairs. If this behavior continues, it's clear that the board needs to be replaced with individuals who genuinely care about the community's well-being. The actions of the HOA board in this situation are downright scandalous. They received a substantial payout of $342,000 from the insurance company to cover damages, yet they've only spent a mere $39,000 to address the issues. Where is the rest of that money going? It's clear that the board is more interested in padding their reserve fund than in ensuring that the residents have safe and livable conditions. The fact that they're refusing to pay for the higher estimates from the unit owner who sought out their own contractor is a blatant sign that they're trying to cut costs at the expense of quality. This is a massive betrayal of trust. Residents shouldn't have to live with buckled floors and the threat of mold for nearly a year while the board plays financial games. It's time for the residents to demand transparency and accountability from their board. They need to know how their money is being spent and why the board is so reluctant to invest in proper repairs. If the board continues to ignore the needs of the community, they risk losing the trust and support of the very people they're supposed to serve. This kind of behavior cannot be tolerated. It's infuriating to witness the HOA board's blatant disregard for the residents' needs. Their suspicion of the one unit owner who sought a higher estimate from a different contractor is laughable. That owner is simply trying to ensure their home is repaired correctly. Meanwhile, the board's contractor is clearly lowballing estimates, and everyone can see it except the board members themselves. This is a classic case of penny wise, pound foolish. They're trying to save a few bucks now, but it will only lead to bigger problems down the line. If repairs are done poorly, the building will face even more costly issues in the future. Residents deserve to live in a safe and well-maintained environment, not one where the board prioritizes their financial bottom line over the health and safety of the community.
I would like to thank you for watching the video to the end. To encourage us to make more videos, please like, subscribe, comment, as well as share. Check out this other video if you haven't already.